Welcome back. In today's video, we're going to learn how to refresh an entity using JPA. Sometimes in real-time applications, the data in the database might change, and we want our entity object to reflect the latest values. That's where EntityManager.refresh comes in. It reloads the entity from the database and discards any local changes. Let's get started. In this demo, we'll first fetch an entity from the database using EntityManager.find. Then we'll manually update that same record directly in the database, using dbeaver or any SQL client, to simulate an external change. After that, we'll try to fetch the entity again without refreshing, and you'll see that it still shows the old data from the persistence context. Alright, let's build this step by step together. Step 1. We'll start by creating a simple get API that takes employee ID as a path variable. Step 2. Inside this API, we'll fetch the employee record using EntityManager.find. And since this is the first time we're accessing this entity in the current transaction or persistence context, JPA will fetch it directly from the database. After this, JPA will also keep that entity in its internal cache, also called the persistence context, for the rest of the transaction. Next, let's log this response to see what data we've got. Now we call the same method again. Again, log the employee object to see what values we got this time. But here's the interesting part: JPA won't hit the database this time. Since the entity is already managed and present in the persistence context, it will return the same cached object. Okay, now after the first fetch and log, we're going to simulate a real-world scenario, where someone updates the record directly in the database. To do that safely, we'll add a small delay using thread.sleep, right after the first log statement. This 30-second pause is just to make sure we get enough time to update the record from outside. Now it's time to start the application. Alright, let's see what's in the database right now. I'll change the name from Chetan to Chetan Kumar manually from the DB. Switch to Postman and hit the Get API for ID 42. The code will pause for 30 seconds, switch to dbeaver and run an update query to change the name. Alright. See now, the employee name has been successfully updated in the database to Chetan Kumar. Alright, let's check the logs now. See here, in the first fetch, the name is Chetan. And just above it, you can see the corresponding SQL query printed in the console. See the second fetch, it still shows Chetan, even though we already updated the name in the DB to Chetan Kumar. And if you notice carefully, there's no SQL query printed between the first and second fetch. That proves it, Entity Manager didn't go to the database again, it simply returned the cached object from memory. This is a JPA optimization. It avoids running the same query again and again inside a single transaction. So if you really want the latest data from the database, not the cached one, you need to tell JPA, hey, refresh this entity. Let's first create a new method refresh in our demo Entity Manager repository. This method will take the employee entity as a parameter. But the main question is, how do we actually refresh an entity? Well, JPA makes it super easy. See, Entity Manager provides a built-in method called refresh. And this method simply takes your entity object as input, that's it. Once you call EntityManager.refresh, it tells JPA to throw away the cached version and pull the latest data straight from the database. Alright. Now instead of calling findByEmployeeID, again for the second fetch, we'll use our new refresh method. We'll pass the same employee object to it, and this will force JPA to skip the cache and reload fresh data directly from the database. Now let's start the application. Okay, this time I'm going to reverse the change. I'll update the name from Chetan Kumar back to just Chetan in the database. Now let's hit the API. Hit the update query from dbeaver and change the name. Now let's open the console logs. See here, in the first fetch, it pulled the old name, Chetan Kumar, as expected. Now wait for the second part. Oh, we got an error, and look at that. It's a transaction required exception. That's because the refresh method internally needs an active transaction, and I actually forgot to add it. Let's quickly fix it. Just go to our repository and add it transactional on top of the refresh method. Restart the application. Alright. This time, we're updating the name from Chetan to Chetan Kumar. Now let's hit the API. Quickly switch to dbeaver and run the update query to change the name. Now jump back to the console. Check this out. In the first fetch, we still see the old name, Chetan, as expected. Now wait for a bit. See. In the second fetch, the name is now updated to Chetan Kumar. Perfect. And look closely, between the first and second fetch, you can see the select query fired again. That means refresh forced JPA to hit the database and pull fresh data. Alright, quick summary. Today we learned how to use EntityManager.refresh to sync our entity with the latest data from the database. We saw that without refresh, JPA gives us stale data from memory, but once we added refresh and ran inside a transaction, real-time DB changes started reflecting. In the next video, we'll cover how clear works and how it helps manage the persistence context. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this helpful, do hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, press the bell icon for notifications, and let me know your thoughts in the comments below. See you in the next one.